Greetings, class. Today we're going to be talking about citations to primary authorities. And let's start by reviewing our authorities. Remember that the primary authority, it is the law of the land. It is derived from constitutions, statutes, common law, regulations, and local ordinances. There's also a lot of other legal authority out there that interprets and explains the primary authority. This is what the legal scholars explain the law to be. Secondary authorities include encyclopedias, digests, treatises and hornbooks, form books, and law reviews. There's a lot of legal materials out there, and there are entire libraries just dedicated to the law, hence the term law libraries. But ultimately, our goal in legal research is to locate and explain the primary authorities. The secondary authorities are tools which help us better understand and locate the law. Remember, when we're looking at sources of law with regard to the Constitution at the federal and state level, that the Constitution creates the three branches of government. Article 1 empowers the legislature to create statutes. Article 2 empowers the executive branch to promulgate regulations. And Article 3 empowers the judiciary, which creates common law, also known as case law, through the doctrine of stare decisis, in which court decisions are precedent. The Maryland Declaration of Rights is Maryland's constitution, and each state will have a constitution. Those state constitutions will create the same three branches of government at the state level as there are at the federal level. Generally, the state laws and the federal laws will coexist, but there are sometimes when the U.S. federal laws will preempt state laws, meaning that if there's a state law that is passed, that state law is unenforceable. So the preemption doctrine will make all state laws on a specific topic unenforceable. Well, how do you know what topics are preempted at the state level? Federal statutes will actually specifically say that it is preempting all state laws on the topic. Federal laws will also supersede state laws. So if a state law conflicts with a federal law, it can still exist, but essentially it will be trumped by the federal law and the federal law will win. When we're looking at the common law, let's look at how it is published. So the court decisions, which establish the precedent, are actually published in writing every time a decision is made. Those publications are made in books called reporters. The reporters have different names, and oftentimes some courts, especially the more popular courts, will have several publishers that will publish the exact same cases in three different sets of materials. So at the federal level, the Supreme Court decisions are posted in an official reporter, and they're also published in two unofficial reporters. The official reporter is the United States Reports. You'll see this abbreviated in a citation as US. The Supreme Court Reporter is one of the unofficial publications. It is abbreviated SCT, and the Lawyer's Edition is also an unofficial version. It is abbreviated LED. Well, what makes these unofficial is that sometimes the publishers, in addition to the primary authority, the actual published court case, will add other interpretations and summaries of the opinion, and those additional summaries or interpretations of the court's opinion are not primary authority, and they're added on to the actual opinion. The United States Court of Appeals also publishes its decisions. Not as many people are eager to buy publications of the United States Court of Appeals cases, so there's really only one official version. The publishers just simply don't have a market for unofficial versions. The official version is called the Federal Reporter. You'll see three different abbreviations for the Federal Reporter: F, F2D, and F3D. The 2D is the second edition and the 3D is the third edition. Quite literally, the cases are published in chronological order and the volumes are numbered 1 through 999. Once they fill up, the they will start over with a second edition. So the Federal Reporter will go volumes 1 through 999, and when they ran out, they didn't go to 1,000. They started a second edition that started renumbering at 1, got to 999 of the second edition, and then they started renumbering again in the third edition with number 1, and they're on that now. The United States District Court publishes some, but not all of its opinions. Those are published in the Federal Supplement. This is abbreviated FSUP. So if you see FSUP in a citation, you always know that it's a decision from the United States District Court. In the Maryland state court system, the Court of Appeals of Maryland is Maryland's highest court. It also has official and unofficial publications of its opinion. The official reports are publications are the Maryland Reports, abbreviated MD. Then you'll see that there are 2 unofficial publications, the Maryland Reporter and the Atlantic Reporter. But note that A2D is the abbreviation for both of those. That is not an error. The Maryland Reporter abbreviation is A2D. Let me explain how it got there. The Atlantic Reporter is a regional reporter. So what the publisher did is they decided that they were going to pack together all of the highest court decisions in several states, and including DC, like Maryland, West Virginia, Delaware. And they packed it into the Atlantic Reporter. And the Atlantic Reporter had all of these decisions all piled in, and literally they were interspersed. You would have a Maryland case decided today, a Delaware case decided tomorrow, and a West Virginia case decided the next day. They were literally published in that order, not organized by state or anything like that. Well, Maryland lawyers didn't really have much need for Delaware cases or DC cases, even for that matter. So there wasn't a huge market for the Atlantic Reporter. So instead, the publisher just essentially pulled out all the cases from Maryland that were in the Atlantic Reporter, published it in a set of books called the Maryland Reporter, and still left the same pagination and volume numbers that they did from the Atlantic Reporter. So you will be reading the Maryland Reporter and you'll read a case that goes from page 1 to 30. And then all of a sudden the next case doesn't start till page 98. And you're like, what happened? Why is it skipping? Well, quite literally between pages 30 and 98, there were cases from Delaware and DC and West Virginia that were just simply taken out. They didn't bother renumbering. This publication system was actually structured before we really had word processing, and I think it was simply just too difficult to renumber the pages. So you'll see the citations to A2D, and when you do, you can pull the Atlantic Reporter off the shelf or the Maryland Reporter off the shelf if you're looking for a Maryland case. It's may be like that in other states, but for the most part, they're not as weird as Maryland when it comes to this. We're going to talk about another Maryland anomaly when we get to the statutes. But look out for these types of things if you're working in different states, that they may have multiple official and unofficial reporters, including regional reporters. Maryland's Intermediate Appellate Court, the Court of Special Appeals of Maryland, also has official and unofficial publications. The standalone official publication is the Maryland Appellate Reports. This is Maryland App. Now, just to go back, I can't go back, but when you on the slideshow, if you happen to go back, you'll notice that the highest court opinion, the Court of Appeals, is abbreviated just MD, but the Intermediate Appellate Court is abbreviated Maryland App. So the Maryland Reports are the Court of Appeals of Maryland decisions, Maryland's highest court. The Maryland Appellate Reports, Maryland App, are the Court of Special Appeals decisions. You'll see that we also have the same 2 unofficial reporters, the Maryland Reporter and the Atlantic Reporter, both again abbreviated A2D. These unofficial publications combine the Court of Appeals and Court of Special Appeals cases in the same set of books. Now, let's take a look at our citations to legal authorities. I have an example here of an official citation to the United States Supreme Court and a string citation to a Maryland court with the official and the unofficial citations. Let's first break them down. According to the Blue Book, This is where we find our resources to tell us how to cite to legal authorities. The Blue Book has very, very specific requirements as to how citations are formatted. You should become familiar with that, and you should follow this strictly in all of your classes and then also when you are at work. If you fail to cite in Blue Book form, it will be number one, difficult to locate the authority upon which you're relying, and number two, the judges or your boss will question your work as being accurate or inaccurate if the citations are not in the appropriate format. So let's look at the format and break it down. The United States Supreme Court citations, according to the Blue Book, should only refer to the official reporter in documents that are filed with court. So we're going to look at an official citation for the United States Supreme Court. The case is Aguilar versus Felton. We always use the case name based upon, when we're dealing with private parties, based upon the last name of the appellant and the last name of the appellee. The versus is always just a lowercase v with a period. It's not vs, so we should never see that in a citation. The case name should also be either underlined or italicized, never both. If you're reading a case in Westlaw, you may see that the entire citation is underlined and in blue. That is because it is a hyperlink. That is not Blue Book form. So please note that hyperlinks may have the entire citation underlined, but when there's no hyperlink, there should be only the underlining or italices of the case name. Following Aguilar versus Felton, which is underlined, the case name, there should be a comma. After the comma, there should be a number. That is the volume number. This is followed by the abbreviation for the reporter, followed by the page number, and then the date of the publication of the decision. Not the date it was argued, not the date that the actual volume of the book was published, but the date of the actual decision of the case that you're referencing. So if you see a citation like this and you're standing in the library, you're like, hey, librarian, I need some help. I need to find the Aguilar versus Felton case. Well, the very first thing you need to do is identify, well, what reporter is it in? U.S. Well, what does U.S. stand for? Okay, yes, it's the United States reports. So you say to the librarian, I need the United States reports. So the librarian stands you in front of a stack of United States reports, and there are volumes and volumes of books there. How do you know which one to pull off the shelf to find Aguilar versus Felton? Well, you look to the number that precedes the abbreviation, 473. That's the volume number. Look for that number on the spine of the book. Pull that book off the shelf and then go to the number after the abbreviation, 402. That's the page number. Turn to page 402, and that's the page on which the case should start. The case will have the full name written out, and it will also, again, have the date it's decided. Please don't confuse this with the hearing date or any other types of dates. You want only the date of the decision. The date should always be in parentheses, and the citation standing alone at the end of a sentence is a sentence in and of itself and should always have a period at the end. Punctuation is important, and this is critical in citations. Let's take a look at the state of Maryland case. Here, when you're referencing a decision in the courts in the state of Maryland, the courts want both the official and the unofficial citations. This is because judges or attorneys may have only one set of those books available to them in their offices. So what we have again is the names of the parties, Smith versus Jones, underlined, followed by a comma, and then you'll see two citations here separated by a comma. The first is Maryland, and the second is A2D. So we know that the official is the Maryland Reports, and that this is a decision of the Court of Appeals of Maryland because of the abbreviation MD. We also know that this is located not just in the Maryland Reports, but it's also located in the Maryland Reporter, the unofficial version, or the Atlantic Second, the regional unofficial reporter. So you could say to the librarian, I need to find Smith versus Jones. And the librarian will ask you, well, what books do you need? You could say, I need the Maryland Reports. And the librarian could say, oh, hon, we don't have that. Don't walk away. Ask the librarian if they have the Maryland Reporter or the Atlantic Second Edition, Atlantic Reporter Second Edition. So let's suppose you have the Atlantic Reporter Second Edition. You're standing in front of the stacks. There are volumes and volumes. Again, you look to the number that precedes the abbreviation, 683. You pull that one off the shelf, and then you turn to page 1988. And boom, that should be Smith versus Jones. The exact same decision if you literally set the books side by side and you found volume 145 of the Maryland Reports 466. Literally, it's the exact same case that's published in both of those books. So you can use either one. Again, the Atlantic Reporter or the Maryland Reporter may have additional helpful resources that are secondary authorities, such as headnotes or a synopsis that will be in addition to the court's decision to help you better understand and read the case. The date of decision is 1999 and is followed by a period. One thing that I want to turn your attention to with regard to case names is that there are specific rules in the Blue Book that you should familiarize yourself with regard to how to cite to cases. Sometimes it's not individuals that are parties, but it's corporations or cities. There are special rules how to cite to corporation names. Usually you have to use the full corporation name. Like if it was Amazon Web Services Incorporated, you would have to cite to it as Amazon Web Services, Inc. period. The Blue Book will tell you how to abbreviate certain terms like incorporated and the like. So again, please keep in mind that there are those nuances that you should become familiar with. Let's turn to statutes now. The statutes at the federal level that are made by Congress and signed into law by the president are called the United States Code. Just like with the federal reporters, there's an official and unofficial version. The USC, the United States Code, is the official code. It is unannotated, meaning that there are no additions by the publisher to help explain or interpret or further research the law. There are two unofficial publications of the United States Code. It has the actual language of the statutes, just like the United States Code USC does, but the United States Code Annotated and the United States Code Service are two unofficial versions, and they contain annotations, which are secondary authorities that are added to the statutes to help you further research the materials and understand the statutes better. The Maryland Code only has one official code, and it also includes annotations. So one publisher has decided to publish Maryland statutes, and it has decided to annotate those as well. You'll see the Maryland Annotated Code referred to as the Maryland Code Annotated or the Maryland Annotated Code. Just because we want to confuse you, no, not really, but it is confusing, Maryland used to publish its code in a numerical sequence. This is the 1957 version of the code. Although the publication format is from 1957, anything that's still published in that format is actually current. It's the current law, but it hasn't been reorganized into the maroon versions of the code, which are organized by subject matter. This has been a process that has been ongoing for probably almost since 1957, but it has taken a long time to get all of the statutes reorganized by subject matter. The Maryland Annotated Code, 1957 version, is published in black volumes, and the subject matter structured or organized version of the code is published in maroon volumes with the name of the subject matter on the spine of the books. The reverse, Maryland Code Annotated versus Maryland Annotated Code, is simply a way to distinguish as to what color book you're looking for. If you see Maryland Code Annotated, look for a maroon book, and if you see Maryland Annotated Code, you're going to look for a black book. Let's break down now a statutory citation to a federal statute. This we look at, we'll see that it's the volume, followed by the abbreviation for the code, followed by the section number, followed by the date that the law was published. or I should say enacted. So here we have USCA, that's United States Code Annotated, an unofficial version. We would look for that stack of books in the library, and then we would have a whole stack of books in front of us, and we'd look to volume 42, pull that one off the shelf. Now, the section numbers are organized by section, not page number. Page numbers are irrelevant to statutory citations, so just disregard pages. Instead, you're looking for a section. So here, this is section 2002E. You literally, the section you'll see on the top right and left hand sides of the page, and that's how you will navigate to the start of the actual language of the statute. It is important, again, to look at the symbols and punctuation that are here. The citation stands alone as a sentence. If it's not incorporated in the body of the sentence and stands alone at the end, it should be followed by a period. The date should be in parentheses, but not anything else. And then you'll see the section symbol, which is located prior to the section number. The section symbol should be followed by a space and then the section number. The section symbol is available if you're using Word or other types of word processing programs by using an insert symbol feature, and then you have to navigate and find the section symbol. I sometimes will create like a shortcut on my computer or a macro to get there if I'm working on legal documents, and then that way it will come up quickly with a shortcut keys that I assign to it. So let's take a look at citation to Maryland statutes. Again, we have a little bit of confusing stuff here because we have the black version and the maroon version, again, all with current statutes. So let's look at the format for the black version, the 1957 formatted version. We start out with the Maryland Annotated Code, that's the abbreviation for the black version, followed by a comma, with article abbreviated ART, lowercase, with a period at the end. A space, the volume number, followed by a space, the section symbol, followed by a space, and then the section number. The date of the statutes in action will be in the parentheses, 2004, followed by the period. Now here you're noticing that there is an additional word in here, or abbreviation, SUP, S-U-P-P. Statutes are frequently updated every year by the legislature. And how do we deal with those updates? Well, we can't publish a new hardbound volume of book every single year. So what happens is any statutes that are updated will be updated in a paperback supplement that is known as a pocket part. It is literally tucked into a pocket in the back of a book. So you've got the volume of the book, volume 49, off the shelf, and tucked into the back of the book is a supplement that is, newsprint paper that's kind of bound and stuck in there. So you always, always, always have to not only read the statute that is in the hardbound version of the book, the original publication, you have to look in the back in that pocket part to see if it has been supplemented at a later date. If it has been supplemented, you have to rely on the language in that supplement as being the law, because the stuff in the hardback is actually stale. So you would alert someone that you have to look in the supplement by abbreviating SUP in the parentheses by the date, and it was supplemented or updated in 2004. When you are looking at materials on Westlaw or other electronic resources, these supplements are unnecessary because all of those materials are constantly updated. So you will see these abbreviations as being important if you are using the books to do research. Now let's look at the maroon version and how that's structured. We flip the names, and instead of Maryland Annotated Code, it's Maryland Code Annotated, period, comma, space, and now we have another set of abbreviations. This is the subject matter organization of the volumes of the book, and this is the words, the subject matter words that are printed on the spine of the book. Corporations and associations. Well, how do you know how to abbreviate it? Literally, in the blue section under Maryland, in the back of the blue book, there is a set list of how to abbreviate every single volume, subject matter organized volume of the books. So you have to use the blue book identified appropriate abbreviation. Corporations and associations, this is how it's abbreviated in the blue book. You follow that by the section symbol, a space, and then 2-504. Well, what's this 2 and a dash now? Well, here now we have a title and a section. The title will relate to the organization of subtopics, and then the section will be on a specific topic. So look for 2-503. Again, I've provided a date in parentheses, but we've got another abbreviation here. Well, what's that? REPL period VOL. What does that mean? Well, that's a replacement volume. So if the pocket part keeps getting updated, and it gets really thick, it literally does not fit in the back of the book any longer. That's when the publisher has to reprint an entirely new set of the hard copy volume of the books. They will throw out the original hard copy and the replacement volume will be issued. Replacement volume will literally be written on the spine of the book so that you know it has been updated. Replacement volumes have pocket parts too because they're updated. So always look in the pocket part if you're doing book-based research to make sure you have the most current versions of the statutes. Lastly, we'll talk about regulations. Regulations at the federal level are published in the Code of Federal Regulations. Every regulation from every federal agency is published here. You'll see the abbreviation CFR, Code of Federal Regulations. Preceded by that is a number. That's the volume on the spine. And then following that is 1245. That number is the section number. Not page number, but section number, like statutes. Page numbers only apply to cases, statutes, and regulations. The number that follows the abbreviation is always a section number. Now, again, because Maryland wants to confuse you, we do not cite to our Code of Maryland Regulations the same way we do to the Code of Federal Regulations. Instead, you'll see the abbreviation COMAR with no punctuation in it, followed by a string of numbers that kind of look like an IP address. 21.02.12.05.09.15. Well, 21 is the volume number, and then 02 is the section, and then there's a subsection, and a sub-subsection, and a sub-sub-sub, and it goes on like that. So if you see those string of numbers that follow COMAR, 21's the volume. That's the book you want to pull off the shelf. And actually, they are updated so frequently, they're loose leaf binders, quite literally, for COMAR. And then you pull it off the shelf, and you access it that way. Again, electronic access may certainly be a whole lot easier simply because it's constantly updated and you have easier access to that. But that's how you would read a COMAR citation, or you would cite to it if you were referencing COMAR. I hope that these overviews have helped. Again, your blue book is going to be your official format for citations, so please be sure to carefully reference that when you are citing to any type of legal authorities.